That's the one thing that we have to make sure that all people we hire have in common. You're not gonna be successful if you don't buy my 20 grand. Dude, fuck you, bro.
Why have you counted yourself out to where you're still alive and you're still calling yourself a C- or C average person?
I'm very big in terms of working with like honest, trusted people. Welcome to the Thankful for Real Estate podcast. A lot of us been impacted in the real estate industry, so that's why we're always thankful for real estate. And so, thank you for joining this podcast. I got Manny Johnson with me.
Hello, hello.
Got Josh of Kind. Manny's also one of the Kind brothers.
I am.
So, today's episode, we're going to be talking about finding great salespeople in a world where it's hard to hire the right salespeople, train the right salespeople, and find the person that's right for your team. So we're definitely going to be talking a lot about like controversial stuff. So let's get right into it.
100%. So like what would you say, Josh, from our experiences hiring, like salespeople, what's been the biggest kind of like thing that we missed the first time that you would love to change, or you think that we did change the second time around?
I think it's good to do like unconventional methods for hiring. And like what I mean by that is like the more we find like successful salespeople, the more I'm realizing all of us is made from the same dough, right? So like what I try to do, man, is I always try to find like what all great salespeople have in common, right? Because like whenever it was just me, you, and Stas, for example, all of us were pretty good at closing deals, and what I was trying to look for is like, okay, what did all of us have in common? Because all of our personalities completely different, right? So there's this one law called the irrefutable law, and the definition of an irrefutable law is if you can find an exception to the rule, then it's not a law, right? So what I wanted to always focus on is like, okay, what did all of us have in common? Number one, and number two is what does all great salespeople have in common? Because where they all will argue a different topic, you can't copy that, But if all of them would agree to the same thing, then you're just like, damn, maybe that's the one thing that we have to make sure that all people we hire have in common. And the biggest thing is, like, when it comes to, like, unconventional methods, I think that, like, doing the typical interview questions, you don't really get to, like, know a person, right? The best way to know a person is just, like, knowing their story. Because some of the things I've found is, like, okay, for example, me, you, and Stas, we're all good at closing deals. What do we all have in common? Well, none of us were extremely extroverted. None of us were extremely introverted. Well, we were all in the middle, which means we're very good at talking to introverted people and we're very good at talking to extroverted people. Right? The other thing that I found that all of us have in common is, how you sell one thing is how you sell anything. So if you can sell one product, then you can sell another, right? So the key thing is, most salespeople, they grew up selling multiple different things. Like I know Stas grew up selling trucking, and then he also like dispatching, and then he also grew up selling like real estate. For me, I grew up selling iPhone chargers. I grew up selling Facebook marketing. I grew up selling real estate. And then for you, you grew up selling solar. You grew up
digital marketing, multitude of fields, man. And I think that's like what has made me a lot better, because I've been around so many different products and you sell it different ways at different companies, right? But the biggest thing was like I found mentors and coaches to help me learn sales, and they taught it completely different, right? I'll shout out one of my guys really quick. His name's Brad Watkins, and he owns a company called Local and Qualified, and they do digital marketing. And the thing that he told me, and it really kind of rang true, and I took it to heart. Well, he was like, dude, there's nobody in here that's more just like naturally prepared to be really good at sales. And I didn't know what he meant by that, right? Because, people always say like, oh, you're a natural born leader, you're a natural born salesperson, you're a natural born extrovert, right? But like, I definitely think if you rely too much on your qualities that you were just God-given, right, it could definitely be a limiting factor there. But Brad told me, he was just like, man, like you got to believe in your heart, right? Like in your mind that you're so good at sales, that you're so delusionally good at sales that like nobody can tell you no, and you'll never win a logic battle, right? Or you'll never lose a logic battle, sorry. And that's one thing that I definitely have taken throughout life with me is like, you will not beat me in a logic battle. And we've been there on many different topics of like, logically, this isn't making sense. And I'm trying to explain to you the logic of why this does make sense and how we should look at it this way. And if you don't have that trait of, I'm not going to lose a logic battle, it's going to be really, really hard to be really good at sales, I would say.
And one thing I'll say about sales too is like 90% of people sell like they get sold on emotions, and then they back it up with logic. Right. And the other thing about sales is like you always got to be able to explain it so simple that like a 96-year-old grandmother can understand.
Or a 4-year-old, or a 5-year-old, right?
Or a 5-year-old child, right? And one thing too, man, that I'm realizing is that like salespeople and entrepreneurs are made from the same dough. Like you literally have to be an entrepreneur if you're in sales, but like you gotta be. But here's the thing, right? Like with that being said, because salespeople are entrepreneurs, they have to believe in the company vision, and what they're trying to accomplish, right? So if they're trying to accomplish, eventually one day we're going to be one of the biggest real estate acquisition firm in these 5 cities. Why they have to understand why they're doing what they do. And then the key thing is like having the freedom to actually implement what they want to implement, because sales never ending game in terms of what you have to learn. Correct. And the key thing too is like, why they're an entrepreneur is like they're obviously managing their own CRM, right? Like every single salesperson, like the key thing is every single salesperson needs 2,000 leads generated for them. You don't have to talk to all 2,000 leads. Chances are you talk to the 500 people we're talking to, right? And out of those 500 leads we're talking to, that salesperson will focus on like a 50-minute conversation with each one of them. Well, and on top of that, like out of those 500 people they talk to, they close 50 deals, right? Which brings in $1 million a year revenue for their company. I think that like the job of every single acquisition manager for a real estate acquisition company is to like bring in $1 million a year. So they, number one, need the resources, but number two, they have to have the skills of what it takes to be like, out of every 2,000 leads that I personally have in my CRM, let me close $1 million from that for my company. 100%. Minimum.
You told me a stat a while ago. If you can't remember it, just don't say it. But you said something along the lines of like 70% of millionaires became millionaires through sales. There was something crazy like that. Do you remember that number?
Yeah, 70% of millionaires became, like 70% of billionaires like had like came from a sales job or some sort of sales background, right? So like sales is a $1 billion skill, underwriting is a $1 billion skill, right? So I think because the thing is, it's like one thing about real estate is that we live in a world where 100, like here's the thing, you're competing against like let's just say 100 people at the closing table against you. Like the key thing is like, how do you differentiate yourself?
Correct. Yeah.
Right? Like, how do you make yourself more relatable? Right? So, what I would say is like, because here in the South, for example, right? Like people like slow talkers, very social. Yeah. Right? Like I see so many New Yorkers, people from New Jersey, people from Connecticut trying to crush it in the South, and it never works out.
Tough. Yeah.
They talk fast, they're very aggressive.
Right.
And then they wonder why they don't do well trying to close in the Southeast.
Correct.
Right? And the same thing is true when you move up north, right? Like everybody from the South is trying to close up north when they're aggressive. Right. Right? They're very fast paced. And they're very good at holding the ground and being dominant. And the moment a southern person tries to close up north, they seem to struggle, right? So trying to match your style of sales in the virtual area you're targeting or local area you're targeting is key to success.
100%.
100%.
And I say that all the time. I mean, like even going back to just my experience in sales in general, man. I worked for a company and where were we located? We were located here in North Carolina, but we worked nationwide. And it was in solar. And I would talk to people from Montana, from New York, from California, from all these different places. And I literally had to become a chameleon and match the way that they spoke, right? New Yorkers, they're known to be very, bashful, very straightforward, straight to the point. I'm that way naturally, right? So it worked out really well for me. But every other rep that we had, they were just having a really hard time having those conversations. Right. They're like, dude, they're so mean, they're so rude, they're disrespectful. The thing that I can close, like the comparison I can make closest to New Yorkers are like Europeans, right? Europeans are very straightforward, they're to the point, and they really don't love like the kind of beating around the bush or like sugarcoating shit. The South, we love that, right? We all about like put it to me the nicest way possible so I don't offend anybody or no one gets upset. Very politically correct here in the South, and we just have to mimic that, right? One of my clients, Nico Wiley, he was like, "Hey Manny, should I jump to another market? What should I do?" I was like, "Dude, like, you're pretty Southern, man. Like, you're from Memphis, Tennessee. You have the accent of Memphis, Tennessee. Like, dominate your market, and then we can worry about another area.
Right, like dominate the Midwest.
100%. Like, we can make our way. Maybe we do more of Tennessee, or maybe we do some places in Kentucky, like where they're a little bit more Southern.
Right,
but like
Mississippi,
Alabama,
Arkansas.
exactly. Because like you're very, very, very Southern, dude. Like I'm a pretty Southern person.
Yeah,
I have a hard time understanding them sometimes.
Right.
You know. So, yeah, man, you definitely got to dominate your market where you can have those conversations best with those homeowners, those sellers in that market.
Let me ask your input on this, man, right? Because, you know, like one thing we're talking about is like hiring the right salesperson. And you brought up a really good point, which is like you got to hire a chameleon.
Correct.
Right? And one thing I find very interesting about you is, you know, obviously this is the audience first time knowing a little bit about you, right? I know you got some fans,
right?
Hopefully. But you know, me knowing you as a friend, right? Like, you know, I know, like what would you say, right? Because finding someone that's a chameleon, I'd imagine a lot of them have a diverse upbringing.
Correct.
I would say.
Correct. Yeah.
So would you say that being a chameleon is more like genetics, meaning that like, oh, you copied your mom or dad who maybe had like a self background or a social background, right? Or would you say it's more nurture, like, oh, I grew up in the North and I grew up in the South and I grew up in the West, so therefore I know how to be, or I grew up within multiple cultures, like hanging around Indians, Asians, Hispanics, whites, blacks,
100%.
right? Like, would you say it's more environmental and your upbringing growing up, or would you say it's more genetic whenever it comes to sales?
I mean, in my case, I would definitely say, like, my dad can talk to anybody, right? Like, he's just a very, you know, extroverted, can talk to anybody, have a great conversation with anybody. But I think me personally, the reason that I'm such a chameleon is, dude, I was born in Southside Chicago. I moved to, you know, Charlotte, which Bader's Ford Road, which is like, if you know Charlotte, it's not the nicest area. And then my mom moved me to Mooresville, which is a suburb of Charlotte, right? Dude, I was like a fly in milk when I moved out to Mooresville. It was like a very, very, very different way of life from what I previously lived. And it was a culture shock, truly. I remember one of my friends, Tanner, he was like, "Hey man, like, you want to go on my boat?" I was like, "What do you mean your boat? Like, you have a boat?" He was like, "Yeah, like, we have a boat. We just take it on the weekends." I'm like, "Do you rent it?" He's like, "No, we own it. Like, we have, you know, it's our boat." And I was just like, "Yeah, I'll go on a boat." But bro, like, I never would have went on a boat. I never would have went skiing. I never would have learned how to fly fish. Like, if I was just living and consistently lived and like acted like the environments that I come from.
Right.
My mom moving me to Mooresville definitely opened me up to different cultures. Yeah. But also opened me up to like different ways of life, right? You know, coming from Southside Chicago, Inglewood is where I was, you know, born. But even Charlotte, right? Like Bader's Ford Road, like, you don't get to see very successful people, right? You don't get to see, you know, I can take my wife out, I can take my kids out, we can go on vacation, we can take a month off or 2 months off and just do what we want to do, because I had never seen anything like that. Right. So for me, man, like, different cultures, different ways of thinking, I think is the main thing. You have to think a different way. Has definitely helped me with sales because I can empathize with a lot of people's situations while also understanding their culture. You know what I mean? Like I think that's the big. I think it's definitely like a learned thing rather than like a genetic thing when it comes to being a chameleon.
You brought up a really good point, man. Like, because you grew up around, like, so you grew up like
predominantly black, you know, people, lower income. We were Section 8 early on in my life. Yeah.
Because to sell a lower income person, you have to speak the language of lower income people.
100%.
And to sell a rich person, you have to be able to speak the language of the wealthy.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, you know, you growing up from the hood, you are able to be a chameleon and, you know, be able to sell anything because they're like, oh, he's one of my people.
I can connect to him, man.
Same thing with the wealthy people, right? You then move to Mooresville and are like a higher, upper middle class area, right? To where, oh dang, I can golf now, I can speak the language of boats, I can speak the language of You know, like, because if you're just like, you know, like, let's just say you're in a rich neighborhood and you're just like acting like it's in the hood or whatever. Oh, it's serious safe.
Right.
They can't relate.
They can't.
Right.
You said something the other day about your niece when she was like playing out in the yard, and you like looked at your brother. You were like, "Oh my gosh, like we have to watch her." He was like, "Dude, this is a gated community. Like nothing's going to happen." You know what I mean? And if it does happen, like they have to go through a gate, multiple security checks. Like it's a very low possibility that something will happen. Right now, we obviously should still watch her, right? But like we don't have to run that risk of like, will somebody come and take her or some weird things happen like that.
Yeah.
And dude, like that accessibility, that. The fact that you can see that does change the way you think about life and like you think about money and you think about success.
Yeah.
Dude, I tell people all the time, man, and I'm gonna get a little political here, Josh. I'll be honest with you. You know, coming from my whole family's in Chicago, man, and I love them to death. But like the way that they view others or the way that they view, you know, life is very different than me. Right. Like. I see, you know, a group of people in general, right? And I'm just like, oh, like that's a group of people, no preconceived notions, but like in Chicago, from their experiences, like they may see a group of white people and be like, I don't want to go near them. They ain't going to trust me. They're not going to, you know, accept me, things like that. And I just come from a completely different way of thinking, man. And that's due to like exposure. Right? Like, dude, all my mentors, all my coaches, every person that like really made an impact on my life has just so happened to be a white man, right? So I can't look at just all white men and be like, they're bad or they don't accept me, they won't trust me, things like that, because it's just, that has not been my experience through life. That goes to show, though, is like, it goes back to that chameleon point, right? Like, I can blend in with a group of people. I used to be very preppy in high school and college, like, Chubbies, Sperry's, Polo, everything, and it was almost like a mask of like having to fit in, having to dress like that to feel like I was accepted, right? As I went on through life, though, man, it's just like you can take me for who I am or you won't take me at all, right? But at the end of the day, I won't judge you before I meet you. I won't judge you based on how you look, how you act, the way you speak, none of those things. Like I will give you that chance to show me who you really are. You know what I mean? Dude, the first time I met you, you had green hair, you're carrying your dog. I was just like, holy shit, like, who is this guy? And then I got to know you, man. I'm just like, this dude is really genuine. Like, he's a moneymaker, he's a businessman. Like, he's the type of person I need to be around, right? 100%. If you close that door before you even get a chance for them to even get to know you or step in, like, you're going to lose, one, not build a lot of relationships, but two, you're going to burn so many bridges that you never even crossed in the first place. So for me, man, like when it goes back to like hiring salespeople, I do love people with diverse backgrounds, not in the sense of like what they are, or race and things like that, but just like what they've experienced through life. Like what has gotten you to this point to where you feel as if sales is your career path because you want to do X, Y, and Z, right? You want to change your life. You want to send your kids to private school. You want to buy a nice house. You want to buy a nice car, whatever that is, right? Like tell me your reasoning and your story up until this point, to where we feel the chance to get, or we feel obligated to give you the opportunity to change your life. Does that make sense?
That makes 100% sense, man. You know, I would say, man, that like when it comes to sales, man, like you know, like you I think one thing we should start doing is like asking people, like, hey, like, what do you know about like all cultures, right? Blacks, Asians, Hispanics, whites, right? Indians. Like, what do you know about poor people, middle class people, upper class people? Have you talked to all of them, right? Like equally, right? Because the thing is, it's like people like buying or doing business with people that they like.
I agree.
Right? Like if they're gonna sell their house to you, they better like you. You better understand their culture. You better understand where they're coming from. Because even if you're talking to a rich person, chances are if they came from the hood, poor, to middle class, to upper class, you gotta speak all languages.
Right.
You know, like if they're like a European background, Indian background, Asian background, Hispanic background, African background, you have to understand, you know, their culture, what they like, and all of that stuff.
And their tendencies, right? Like, I think, you know, for me, man, like I don't ever want to use like, you know, race or like demographic as like a crutch, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, Asian Americans act completely different than Black Americans, right?
Right.
African Americans act completely different than Hispanic Americans. Even if you go down to like the white level, right? Jewish Americans act completely different than Irish Americans. It's just very different, right? And if you don't understand that, it's going to be very hard for you to really make that decision of like, are they doing this because I'm not making sense, or is it just literally a part of what or who they are, the type of person that they are, right? One of my biggest mentors, his name is he's one of my coaches, Coach Hans, and we had a long talk when I was a kid, and he was just like, Manny, I come from Indiana, like very minimal money, we're like a farming community, there's no way that if I get to the place where I am right now, if I don't have accessibility and exposure to other different ways of living, right? Yeah. Like if he just continued at that point, man, he would just be in Indiana, working as a farmer, working as a, and there's nothing to knock those jobs, right? But like that would have been his future, right? That would have been his life. But he was good at he was good at sports. He played college football. He went to the NFL, and then once he got the exposure to like, hell, I just signed a check for $100,000. They're giving me $100,000. I can do different things, right? Like, I don't need to just be an NFL player. I can invest my money. I can start a business. I can educate myself. And, like, he got that because he got to a spot where he had some liquid. He had some liquid capital, and he was able to see different ways of living, man. I think that's just the most important thing is, like, can you look at someone and can you ask them and can you talk to them and see if, like, they come from or they know or recognize a different way of living, a different way of, why your spending habits are this way, why your investment habits are this way, why you save money, why you don't spend money. Like just understanding those things at a very core like level, I think will help every single salesperson, man.
I know where somebody grew up and why they are the way they are.
Gosh,
it's so important. Because like we live in such a diverse world nowadays where like we're here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Nobody here from freaking Charlotte, North Carolina.
Nobody did.
Right? So knowing where they're from is so important to knowing like how to do business with them.
100%. Like Stas being from Europe, right? Like he fits the mold of a European businessman, right? Like he acts like a European businessman, right? You're from the South, you act like a Southern businessman in the sense of like build a relationship, build a connection, be a good person, like win them over with kindness, win them over with your like your likability, your personality. And that's not the case for a lot of places, right? The numbers don't make sense, they don't want to do the deal, right? Some places the numbers can make sense and they just really like you and they want to do the deal. Or they hate you, so they don't want to do the deal, right? So it's just like being a salesperson is being adaptable to any environment, any call, anything that comes in. You have an answer for that because you have just thought about it and figured out a way to have a conversation with this person. We always joke about I'm better at speaking to women on the phone than you are, right? And one thing for me is like I grew up with a single mom. That's my best friend. Right? Like I know how to talk to women because like my best friend is my mother, right? Like I have conversations with her about just life and TV and friends and just everything. And I know how to speak to women so well because like my best friend is my mom, right? I talk to my fiance about a lot of woman things, reality TV and nails and skincare. And I know all these things, right? Because like I speak to my fiance. But man, like it's really tough if you can't connect. And I'm not saying a lot of women to get on the phone and talk about skincare, right? But like if it comes up, I can have that conversation, right? Did you watch The Bachelor last night? No, I didn't watch it, but I love Rodney. Yeah, right? Like all those little things like make you more likable, right? I love when I get on the phone and I can talk sports to some of my clients, man, because I love sports, tennis, baseball, rugby. I can literally talk about any sport. It's always a great conversation to have. So one wants to talk about the economy, you want to talk about the Dow, like I can have a conversation with anything, man, because like when I've educated myself in these things, but I've also had conversations throughout my life to where people wanted to talk about these things. So yeah, man, like my fiance always says, like, if we're in a room and we don't know strangers, like I want to be next to you because I know that you can create a conversation with any random stranger. And I pride myself on that, like I do pride myself on like being able to hold a conversation with any person. That's something she hates. It's something that I love, right? So, yeah, man.
And one thing I'll say too, man, like there's this quote by Charles Darwin that I love, and it says that it's not the strongest that wins, it's not the most intelligent that wins, is the one that's most adaptable.
Right.
That's who survives, right? The strongest person is going to be like, oh, let me hammer out the phones. But man, these people can do freaking, 100 dials and only close like one deal.
Right.
Right? So the strongest don't win.
Right.
The intelligence, like, oh, I know everything about everything. Oh, dude, like, whoa, why would I want to work with you? I don't necessarily, you don't know me.
Right.
But like the person who's adaptable is like, yeah, man, like, I understand the Indian background.
Right.
I understand the Hispanic background.
Right.
I understand, like, oh, you grew up in the hood, but now you're like wealthy, whatever.
Right.
Like, I can have a genuine conversation with you.
Right.
And the biggest thing too is like when it comes to being a chameleon for sales, no matter what you sell, whether you sell solar, roofing, wholesaling,
whatever,
anything. Right, because persuasion is the highest level of influence, right? So the way you influence is like, can you, persuade them to do something good with their life, right? So because sales isn't manipulation, as long as you're selling a good product or service
100%.
that actually impacts them,
provides value.
Now the key thing is discipline, right? Because the discipline of like, hey, can I build a genuine intimacy, trust, and connection with this person to show, because too many people is like, oh, let me use this sales tactic, let me try getting the first number out of them, let me try being aggressive here, let me try being aggressive there. Bro, that doesn't always work. If you're the same personality on every single phone call, you close 10% of people.
100%. And the thing about it, man, is like everybody is looking up the same things or like getting the guidance from the same places, right? Like the only thing that's going to separate you is you, right? Like a lot of times when we have reps come in, they're like, what separates us from the other competitors, right? And I tell them, I'm like, you're the person that separates us from the other competitor, right? Like, can you build enough value? Can you bring enough impact to their life to where they trust you to take on a very large part of their operation, right? Like some people you'll call, like some companies you'll call and you won't be able to talk to anybody, right? Or you'll just be able to email or just chat or whatever it is, right? But like with us, you get to call, you get to build a relationship. There's a human interaction to where they can feel more safe, more comfortable, and more readily available to like pull the trigger because they trust you, right? It's a collaboration, right? Like if this list stinks, right, it's because like we both made this list stink, right? We collaborated on absentees and vacants and divorce and deceased, right? Like in this ARV and this equity percentage. We worked on this together, right? Let's make it succeed together as well. That's a big thing for me. And a lot of people do, like, they just don't think about it that way. They don't separate themselves, and they lead with the numbers, like you said. They lead with the analytics. They lead with the stats, and you're not separating yourself from every other person, especially being a newbie, right? Like, and you're not.
People, they don't like analytic stuff. Unless they're an analytical person, don't talk about, like, numbers and all of that stuff. Like, 'cause I know for, like, a lot of wholesalers, for example, they try to, like, for example, they try to negotiate with like absentee owners. A lot of them own like 10 rental properties, 15 rental properties. You think you're going to beat them on repair costs? No, you won't.
No chance.
But if you just generalize the numbers, like, hey man, you want to know the repairs? The repairs are that, frickin' material cost is up 800% because of all these import taxes that are going on from Canada, like lumber too expensive, that the repairs. And on top of that, labor cost is up like 600% since pre-COVID. Why that the numbers, man. You want to know other numbers? The other numbers is, for people that just trying to hire a contractor one time, like the reality is they're not going to be able to get those contractor prices down because it's just a one-time business. So the only people like profiting on flipping on houses is, the people that are, like doing repeat business with the contractors. So like that's why, like if they're a wholesaler, rather than just, let's just say you're trying to negotiate with someone who owns like 10 or 15 rental properties that know the repair costs, you generalize everything to a point where you're just like, hey man, look, the numbers are, frickin' materials are up 800%, here's why. Frickin' labor cost is up 600%, here's why. Why? Because like a lot of my clients right now are telling me, dude, because of immigrants being deported, the Mexicans are like hiding from doing the landscaping, doing the construction and all of that stuff, and that's why my freaking labor cost has gone up.
It's a very real thing,
too. It's a very real thing. So the key thing is, when you're dealing with especially when you're dealing with people smarter than you, don't bring a freaking knife to a gun battle.
Right.
They obviously know the repair cost. Don't think you know more than them. No, generalize them. They're gonna read between the lines,
Right.
and they're gonna be like, yeah, what this person is saying is absolutely right.
Right.
And then the key thing is, just selling, like whenever I talk to homeowners as a wholesaler, when I'm doing a wholesale transaction, like one thing I'm very big on doing is eliminating the homeowner's option.
Right.
So like for me, I always tell the homeowners, look man, if I were you, if this was pre-COVID, I would tell you to flip the house yourself because you're gonna make more profit that way.
Right.
But here's the reality. Like the reality is, I think it's better to sell your house in as-is condition, and the reason why is because number one, most people don't make money on their first fix and flip.
Right.
Number two, most people don't make any money on their second fix and flip, right? So like the reason why is because they haven't gotten their labor cost down 50%, and they haven't gotten down their material cost 50% because they haven't done multiple transactions, right? You as a homeowner, if I were in your shoes, I think it's personally better to sell your house in as-is condition versus doing the flip yourself, right? So I eliminate the option of them, flipping the house themselves, but I also eliminate the option of them, working with other wholesalers. And the way that I do that is I always say, like, look, man, the thing about, like, I know you get all of those other quotes that say, like, we buy houses and all of that stuff, right? But reality is that, like, for me, I will always try to pay way more money than them. Here's the thing, right? Like, even if it's not true for that wholesaler, right? You sell, because they like, here's the thing. Other wholesalers told them we buy houses, but they never gave out a number. Right? So they won't know. So, like, for me, as a wholesaler, whenever I talk to the homeowners, I'm always like, here's the thing, man. The thing is that, like, it's better to work with me because other people that flip houses, they want to make 40 grand average per flip. For me, I'm okay with making 20 grand average per flip. For me, where too many wholesalers, they're in this game where they're trying to be like, oh, I'm this big company that buys houses.
Correct.
Oh, well, if you're this big company, why don't you pay me more cash? Well, the reason you should work with me, man, is like, number one, man, is that, like, for most of those other, like, people that, that make these offers to you, most of them can't even close. They think they can close until, like, their lender, like, inspect the house, and the lender's like, oh, we can't approve this transaction.
Right.
Me on the other hand, whenever like I give you this number, I'm not gonna try to renegotiate afterwards. Like whatever number I tell you, like that's the like as long as there's no major issues with roof, foundation, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, like we're good to close on exactly the number I just gave you.
Right.
Because for me, like, look, whenever I do business with people, I want to make sure that, like, you guys walk away with the most amount of money possible, like, as long as the numbers make sense.
Right.
So, and the other thing too is, like, like really, to be honest, I would tell you to go to that other person that offered you money, but the thing is, I don't know them personally. I don't trust them. Like, I know a lot of people that flip houses in this industry. Those names you gave me, I don't know them personally. And, like, for you and I, we built this relationship to where, you just told me about, like, yourself, and, I told you a little bit about myself. There's that little intimate connection, even though it's, like, our first time talking.
Right.
For me, I'm very big in terms of working with, like, honest, trusted people. I don't know those other people that gave you the offer, and therefore, like, I don't know if they're just saying those numbers, then all of a sudden they send some sort of, like, contractor to the house, and then they try to renegotiate after, and they run some sort of shady business like that. So, like, for me, I know that, for me, like, I'm a person you can trust, Mr. Seller. Like, for me, like, because, I care about every person I talk to, and I want to make sure that they're able to sell their house in asset condition without having to do, like the freaking 60 grand, 120 grand worth of repairs, they're going to walk away with the most amount of money they possibly can for the transaction. And if a lot of wholesalers just walked up to every single seller with that mentality of, like, look, for me, I think you should do business with me because, I understand you. And for me, I'm not going to take advantage. Because, like, the reality about business is, like, half of the people out there are freaking taking advantage of people.
That's it.
But you know you're a good person that won't take advantage of people, right? So because remember, sales is never manipulation if you know you have a righteous heart, right? Like that, you're never gonna do this person wrong. Right, because there's too many people that like try to take advantage of people, but you as a person, the reason you need to get so good at sales is because you know you're gonna do the right thing. You know you're gonna take the long path to actually help this person. Take the time of like, oh, what you need to find another house to move into. Like, are you looking to rent or are you looking to buy another house? Because either way, like if you're looking to buy another house, I know some trusted realtors in the area that can help you. Yeah.
Right. 100%.
Looking to rent, I'll personally help you find the best place to rent. And then from there, they'll be like, you know what? I'm going to refer my friend to you just because this is a 10 out of 10 outstanding service with a very easy process that the person, and the person is very social, communicative, and took the time to understand me versus being pushy. I hate pushy salespeople, man. I would never do business with a pushy salesperson.
Dude, it's always funny when people reach out to me, and it just be a random person that doesn't know me, doesn't know us or anything, and they'll just be like, we'll just be talking, and we're talking about their market, and we're talking about their operation and everything, and I'm like, hey man, let's do a deep dive. Let's just get into the nitty gritty of everything. Your market, the deals, your spreads, let's get into the nitty gritty. And we look up and it's 2 hours long. And they're like, oh bro, I don't have money to pay you right now, man. How much was this mentorship session? I'm like, dude, it's free.
Yeah.
Right? We're here to help you out. I tell people all the time, if you don't win, I don't win. If you don't win, our company doesn't win. What's the catch? The catch is you being really good to where you come back and you call me, you're like, Manny, I closed a $40,000 deal. Yeah. And then we just duplicate that and replicate that 10 times or 20 times over. Right? It's just it's really tough for me to, back to the salespeople, right? It's really tough for me to see a salesperson that's naturally just a very pushy human and see a future where they work out really well with us, because we're not pushy at all. I tell people all the time, I tell our reps, if they're not ready today, then they're not ready today.
Exactly.
Let's just get them the next day, right?
And the other thing too, man, it's if someone's trying to be pushy with you on selling something, don't do business with them.
Don't do business.
Why? Because there's so many people out there oh, buy my course, man. Oh, if you're not going to be successful if you don't buy my 10 grand course today. You're not going to be successful if you don't buy my 20 grand. Dude, fuck you, bro. Right? Why the fuck would I do business with an ingenuine person? If you don't have any, you didn't take the time to understand my family scenario right now, why the fuck would I do business with fucking you?
Right.
Just because you're this rich, successful dude. Chances are, you're this rich, successful dude. Chances are, you're trying to, take the 10 grand from me because, the way you make 90% of your money is taking advantage of people. Why the fuck would you want to learn from somebody taking advantage from people?
Correct.
Right? The biggest red flag I always see is whenever someone's in multiple industries or they're teaching fucking e-commerce, Amazon, fucking wholesaling, so many things all at one time. Dude, they ain't an expert at shit.
No.
Right? For me, if I'm going to do business with somebody, I want to make sure, number one, they're genuine because they're always going to over-deliver. Right. And number two, I want to make sure I do business with someone that's not a BSer, right? If they're trying to fucking push me on a sell, dude, here's the thing. You can sell me on 40 grand, a 40 grand product, no problem, right? But if I see you're just trying to be pushy and you're trying to not add any value first, you're not trying to build a relationship, you're not trying to get to know me, fuck you, I'm not gonna do business with you.
Right.
For me, I always want to work with genuine people. There's too many people out there. The way you and I always have this conversation, 50% of people are genuine, 50% of people are not genuine. Right? So whenever it comes to people finding mentors, dude, 50% of them, there's gonna be so many people out there where they seem genuine, right? Until people have to be able to see the red flags, oh, this person's really trying to push me.
Right.
And the thing is, this person doesn't care about me, right? If you're gonna do business with somebody, do business. Read the flags. Is this person someone I can trust? Number one.
Right.
And number two, am I doing business with someone that over-delivers, that genuinely cares about me,
right.
to where dude, if I don't, they have skin in the game with you, right? If I don't win, they don't win. You know,
Right.
like you don't want to be in a scenario where like someone just like, oh, here's freaking my 10 grand mentorship. It's up to you to be successful. No, for us, we're always like, dude, you can call us anytime. You got any issues? Call us anytime.
Right.
You know, like I know for me, like I always tell my clients, dude, I don't care if it's fucking 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning, give me a call or a text at the bare minimum. And then like if you're struggling somewhere, whether it's generating leads, whether it's marketing, whether it's like closing the deals, give me a call.
Right.
And if I'm awake or if I got time, I'm gonna give you a call. You know, cause there's always time, right? Like I'm always, because the other thing too is like humble is always the way up. For example, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you gotta be hanging with 5 other people on your level or above your level.
Right.
You know, if you want to be a successful salesperson, you gotta be hanging out with like 5 salespeople who are really good at what they do from multiple industries.
Multiple industries, yeah. I agree. I definitely agree. It's funny, bro. When I bought my Audi, the guy, like, I went in and I was just like, I want an SUV. I want an SUV. I want an SUV. And I went and looked at like a BMW SUV. I went and looked at a Mercedes SUV. And then the guy was just such a good guy. I can't think of his name right now. But he was like, would you be open to a car? And I was just like, sure. You know what I mean? I'll look at a car. And he put me in my Audi. And the entire time, dude, I'm driving this car. I'm test driving it. He didn't mention anything about the car. He's just like, well, man, what type of music you like to listen to? And he pulled it up and he played the song. And then he's like, oh, where you from, man? And I'm just like telling him my whole life story. Long story short, bro, I get done with my test drive. I get out of the car and I like look at the car and I'm just like, bro, let's go buy it. And he's just like, you sure? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. He was just like very nonchalant about the entire transaction. And it just made me feel so at peace, bro, because I'm just like, this guy isn't like fiending for this close, right? And it's not a cheap car. It's a pretty nice commission. And he's just like so excited about getting to know me, getting to know like where this car is going, that he did not care about the transaction at all. And I felt that. And at the very end, I was like, I looked at his manager and I was like, is this guy getting a commission from this? And he was like, yeah. I was like, this dude was amazing, man. Like, I did not feel pressured. I did not feel pushed. It felt like a very, like this car was given to me, right?
Yeah.
Like he was just like, here, bro, here's a car, you can drive it. And it just felt so good, man.
And that was a car you didn't even want in the first
Didn't even want a car, bro. I didn't want a sedan. I wanted an SUV the entire time.
One thing I want to mention too is like, a lot of people are like, oh, what's the best acquisition sales script? Anybody who tells you that you need a script, it's freaking lying, right? Like, sure, okay, first 2 weeks of training, sure, why not?
Process,
right?
I would say, yeah.
Right, just so they like, if they get lost somewhere, they can look at their sheet and be like, oh, dang, this is what I should say. Right? But the reality is, if you want someone bringing in $1 million for your company, which is the reason you're hiring them for 60 grand a year anyways, 60 grand base plus commission anyways.
Right.
They have to learn to be able to genuinely talk to people without reading a script, because that's the only way you actually genuinely get to know people. Like for me, I always want to genuinely get to know anybody I'm around. I could be standing at a freaking Starbucks line. I'm like, oh, tell me about yourself, man. Like, you never know who you're gonna meet.
Right.
Especially if you're going on like a date and stuff. For me, I just genuinely want to know who that person is. And people will find people interesting the more you find them interesting.
Right.
For me, I'm just like, oh dang, really, man? Tell me more about that story.
Right.
I'm like so freaking excited, man.
Right.
Like I've never heard anybody that's gone through that thing.
Right.
And then like for me, even if I don't get something out of it, like I know I can always call somebody and they call me with a smile on their face, and then they're just like, dude, you're the first person I thought about. I know, you own a company that sells data and stuff. Dude, one of my friends was telling me that they own a solar company and roofing company and real estate investing company, and they wanted to buy data. Bro, you're the first person that popped up in my head.
Right.
Is it cool if I give you cool if I give them your number? I'm like, absolutely. Man, 100%. And so now whenever I approach people, man, for them they always think damn. Because, Kind is so genuine, Josh is so genuine, Manny is so genuine, even you, whoever's listening to the freaking, podcast and stuff, if they see you as a genuine person, man, they will do business with you, because in a world where everybody is using the same script, where everybody trying to be pushy, where everybody trying to twist people's arm, you just being kind, it's the road to winning the game. And it's a long road. Usually the long road is the best road there is, because As Bruce Lee says, I don't fear the man that does 1,000 kicks in one day. I fear the man that does one kick a day for 1,000 days. So for you, if you just learn how to build a connection with people, like let's just say you're 1% better every single day for 1,000 days, you're gonna get ahead of 99% of the people where they're just like, damn, I only want to work with you. Why? Because everybody else is so pushy. Everybody trying to take advantage of me. And dude, what's more important than your name? Nothing is more important of your name, because the reality is, it's like it's so easy to get canceled, blacklisted. Like people, like word spread fast. Oh, that's the person, that's the name that called you? Dude, don't trust that person.
Right.
But words will always spread fast. God will always, take care of, people that take advantage of other people, down the long road.
Yeah.
Let bad things happen to them. Don't worry about those people. The reality is, God handles people like that. For you, you always gotta focus on your own journey, focus on being the best you possibly can be, focus on getting your skills to a level where you add the most value. Even when it comes to wholesaling, I was talking to one of my friends, one of my friends is like, dude, I learned how to do novations because it adds 20 grand to the seller's pocket. And the reality is, he's like, dude, I make $6 million a year doing novations, and I make $2 million a year wholesaling.
Yep.
And the reason why is because novation adds more value to the seller's pocket. Same thing when it comes to creative deals. People like, oh, I want to earn an assignment fee. Well, dude, chances are, I'll give you a perfect example. In South Carolina, for example, a lot of people is like, oh, well, assignments are illegal. Well, that means the people that, and so 90% of the competition is out of South Carolina, out of it.
Yep.
While all of our clients in South Carolina, their business went from doing 150 grand a year to 750 grand a year overnight, changing nothing, because 90% of the competition left. These people stopped receiving phone calls. Now, with that being said, because assignments are illegal, which, somewhat the case for, Illinois, Kansas, Oregon, whatever. There's always going to be states like this. But the key thing is, I know for frickin' South Carolina, I know a lot of people learning installment methods to where, oh, boom, they're earning 20 grand, 35, 40 grand, 60 grand assignments. Right, even though it's not called an assignment, right? It's just an engineering fee, right? To where they're still earning the same fee for wholesaling the deal, for bringing in a buyer for a property, just structuring the paperwork differently. Boom, you always get paid in proportion to the value you add. For me, being from Fayetteville, North Carolina, there was a huge need for me, there were no comps in the area that I grew up in. I put the first comp in every single neighborhood. So for me, there was a huge need, because flippers will not buy if there's no comps in the neighborhood. There was a huge need for, selling buy and hold investors. The vision of dude, here's the thing, this is the perfect buy and hold neighborhood. I ran your formula. Right? And then by running your buy and hold formula, this is the perfect investment property for you. I would always structure subject to assignment, owner finance assignment, seller leaseback assignment, seller holdback assignment. I would earning an assignment fee through all of those transactions, because I knew how, because when it comes to purchase agreement, paperwork and everything, the closing attorney or title company always has to do whatever the paperwork says. So in wholesaling, for example, what the product we sell paper that a buyer is willing to buy. So if you can make a paper that is completely legal, to where so let's just say I negotiate oh, dude, your property has too low equity, why don't I pay you $0 $0 down, but I break even your mortgage at $1,600 a month every single month. Well, boom, you move a low equity deal and nobody else can move.
Right.
You move a freaking negative equity deal and earn assignment from it that nobody else could move. Right? So you will always get paid in proportion to the value you add, but the hardest thing is being able to influence somebody to take action on something that will better their life. Is the most important thing, because here's the thing, you can tell somebody oh yeah, you own this vacant house right here that's been vacant the last 6 years. The reason nobody bought it is because it has too low equity and it has 60 grand worth of repairs. That's the reason you can't sell it. And I know you're paying out a mortgage of freaking $1,600 a month. No, if you're just like, if you learn to solve that person's problem, the thing about real estate is 80% of people's net worth is in their freaking single family home, right? So that's why, like, if 80% of people's net worth is in their real estate and their businesses, and 20% is in cash, the 20% of money that is in cash goes to the gas stations, it goes to the people paying, the landlords that want rent from you, it goes to the freaking fast food restaurant, the entertainment, the utilities, right? So how else do you unlock money? Well, 80% of people's net worth is in their single family homes, their real estate, and their business. Well, if that's where 80% of America's money is, well, if you learn to unlock equity, right, from that property by learning how to add value, then what happens is, all of a sudden, you have a net worth of 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 6 million, because you became so valuable in your marketplace, so valuable that the market is like, no, this person deserves to have 200 rentals. This person deserves, like my richest friend has 15,000 rentals total. He makes like $330 million a year. You know, like, how did he earn that? No, he became so valuable to his market that his market needed him to solve all real estate problems. And so that's the same thing with wholesaling. Wholesaling is the ability, you're solving three things. Number one, you're getting quick cash to the seller. Number two, you're allowing a fix and flipper, buy and hold investor, or a builder or developer make more profit because they don't want to do marketing.
Right.
The reason they're willing to pay you 20 grand, 30 grand, 100 grand assignment fee is because they don't want to do marketing, and yet you found them an investment opportunity where they're going to make money flipping it, putting a new build on it, or they're going to make money via cash flow or appreciation because you found them a deal that they can't refuse. And number three, the way that you're adding value is you're making the neighborhood and city look nicer. Without wholesalers, the whole world will be a freaking ghost town, right? And then, like, reality is there will be just so many vacant houses. No.
Right.
We literally sell houses to freaking flippers to where, dude, like, the average American takes out a 30-year loan to buy their dream house or their starting home. And what we do is we make sure that they move into a not-so-shitty house.
Correct.
We make sure that it's looking nice so that people can have their kids grow up in a way where it's like, oh, dang, I'm so glad my parents took out the 30-year loan for us to live in this nicer-looking house. And that's why it's so valuable to them that people will pay for that thing for 30 years. Right? And so the value that wholesalers add is like we give the opportunity for like a husband and wife to start a family, to move into a beautiful house, you know, within a rent that they can afford.
Right.
And that's the true value. Like a lot of people is like, oh, dude, I don't know what I'm selling. What are you selling? You're selling these three things. You're selling these three values, and that's why a McDonald's worker earns minimum wage, but you earn frickin' 15 grand, 30 grand, 60 grand, 100 grand plus per opportunity that you create.
Right. I can't remember the guy's name, but I listened to like a 3-hour-long podcast from him one day when I was driving somewhere, and he talked about engineers, and he was saying like the engineer's input does not affect their output. And what he meant by that is like an engineer can work on something for 2 weeks, they'll put in like 120 hours, right? And they'll make their same salary, right? But at the same time, an engineer at a high level can do 4 hours of work and make the same amount of money that engineer at that starting point and that's working with a smaller company on a smaller project is making that same amount of money, right? And it's really the same thing of like input versus output, right? Sometimes the input is going to affect the output, and then in some scenarios you might pull up on a deal and it's like a fix and flip and it's no negotiations and you make $100,000 and you're like, oh my God, if I can replicate this every single time, I'll be a multi-millionaire, right? But like the input is not a unilateral thing, right? Like sometimes your input's going to be really high and you're going to make a lot of money, and then sometimes your input's going to be really high and you make a little bit of money, right? So it's like back to the value that you can bring to the community, to the buyers, to your partners essentially, and then also the value that you can bring to yourself with the education of learning creative deals, learning innovations, learning sub-twos, learning owner-seller finance, and learning how to flip, building connections with buyers and developers and builders in the area. So yeah, man, just kind of piggybacking off of that.
Let's break that down too, man, because that's such a 10 out of 10 point, man. You know, the thing is, it's like, how hard you work does not equal how much money you have.
You told me
right?
that. Yeah.
Because if that's true,
Yeah.
fucking construction workers would be, construction workers, nurses would be the freaking wealthiest people in the U.S.
Right.
Right? The reality is that no, you get paid in proportion to the value that you create.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is, if you're able to create someone's dream home, every single day,
Mm-hmm.
that's how you earn 15 grand, 30 grand a day.
Right.
Right, and like, so, but there's a process to that, right? So like what I mean by that is, like when it comes to wholesaling real estate, a lot of people can, like the average new person closes 1 in every 120 leads. The average wholesaler closes 1 in every 60 leads, right? The average pro closes 1 in every 15 to 30 leads. Right, and with that being said, what I see a lot of people do is, so remember the average new people generating 120 leads to close a deal, what they do is they'll literally cold call all 120 people. It'll take them a whole, let's just say 1 month to do, 30 days to do, and what happens is, boom, they close 115 grand deal. The average pro, what they do is they produce the same 120 leads, right? They're like, oh, like these are the 30 people we're talking to. And then out of the 30 people I talk to, okay, like I listen to what their problems are. One person I could throw into innovation, one person I can throw into wholesale. 10 people, what I can do is, I asked them if all of them were down to sign a listing agreement. 10 of them said yes. You can sell all of those 10 people to agents where they'll pay you $200 a lead. $200 times 10 retail leads, boom, you just made $2 grand
Right.
to cover your cold caller costs, right? So people will pay you if you're able to listen to their problem, and number two, know how to solve their problem.
Right.
But the biggest thing too is like influence. Can you influence them to actually take action
Right.
on what they want? Because like a lot of people, here's the thing. The thing is, a lot of people, like they're not one to really take action on what they say they're gonna do because that person hasn't really sold them on why it's important now, right? Like, oh, dude, you have a freaking property with squatters in it, and those squatters been in there the last 3 years, and then obviously the freaking liens and the freaking mortgages have stacked up to being like $29,000. Like, and I know you talked to fucking 3 people, and none of them convinced you to take action, right? But I'm gonna tell you this, dude. Like, from listening to your story, what you told me is that, like, the reason you got into real estate is because you're watching, like, real estate courses and stuff. They told you to get into the game of the rental, get into the game of buying rentals, and, the first rental was a fail, right? But because me listening to you over the phone, I'm going to tell you this, man. Like, dude, like, you're obviously passionate about this real estate game. It's just that you had one failure.
Right.
So the reason I think you need to take action is because, dude, show me this house and assets condition so that you can get, so that you're not gonna break even from this. You might lose 30 grand, but at least you can start from back to the drawing board and impact your life to, like, dude, because I learned from the first deal. I'm not gonna let this happen to me on the second deal. And so for me, whenever I'm talking to a lot of landlords and stuff like that, they're like, damn, this person understands me. Therefore, even though I'm taking a 30 grand loss, I'm gonna trust this person.
Right.
And a lot of times they call me back. They're like, dude, you were so right. Like, I literally did like three quick fix and flips. I made 100 grand. I'm positive. Not only that, like with this 180 grand, I went ahead and I bought like 2 rentals, $0 down, and I'm cash flowing $350 per door, right? And then, like, because of you, shoot, dude, I'm gonna buy 10 houses from you per year, right? Just because you helped me, with my life. And so the key thing is, I've always been a big believer in this, man. Like, people in the wholesaling industry, like, we get rich making rich people richer, right? So for fix and flippers, for example, we help them make 30 grand to 60 grand a flip. That's why they pay us 15 to 30 grand, right? For builders, we help builders make 100 grand net per build. That's why the builders are cool with paying 20 to 35 grand plus, because they're making 100 grand plus per transaction, and then we're the ones to help them find those transactions. So the key thing is, in life, we are on this bus ride, and the thing is everybody that hops onto our bus, whether it's the seller, whether it's the buyer, whether it's like people we do JV with, we want to live a lifestyle of let's take care of every person that hops on our bus, right? Like, oh, this person struggling with like the fact that they got to sell their freaking rental, and like someone sold them on a wrong, someone sold them on a wrong transaction. No, let me sell them on something that's going to impact their life, which is take the loss right now, start over right now, and here's the game plan. The game plan is, 2 years from now, this is what's gonna happen. Right? Boom. You impacted their life, and look, the key thing is like, okay, boom, why? They hop on your bus. Right? They hop on your bus, boom, I'm taking care of you because you chose to hop on my bus.
Right.
Why? I'm gonna double down on you and listen to you because you chose to hop on my bus. Then people just get off of your bus, right? You might forget about things because chances are everybody's hopping on your bus every single day.
Right.
And then the reality is, it's like, boom, the moment they hop on your bus again, they're like, dude, this was the best fucking bus ride I've ever had in my life.
100%. I got a little quote that my coach, he's my coach, but he used to tell our guys, he was like, you're on the roller coaster, right? Like, you're on this roller coaster with us. We're all in here together. We're packed in here together. What's the only way to get hurt? And the only way to get hurt is to jump off that roller coaster, right? Like, if we're all in here together, we can handle anything, we can endure anything, like, we can take care of anything. The only way that you're going to get hurt is if you jump off this roller coaster or jump off this bus with us. That's the way that you're going to get hurt. One thing, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when I first got into my life, right, like a career, I was installing solar panels. And one of my leads, he was just like, hey, bro, like, you're pretty decent at this, but like, I really think you do really well in sales. Shout out to Mike. And Mike was just like, bro, you should go try to sell it. And first 3 months, dude, I was terrible. Like, I was absolutely god awful. Didn't put up a deal, didn't know where to go, didn't know what I was going to do. Like, I was looking for work. Like, I was looking like I need to find another job. Something just clicked. And I went from making no deals at the month 3 to month 4. I made 5 deals in that month. And the only way that I would have got hurt and my life would have looked completely different than it is right now is if I jumped off that roller coaster, right? And I completely shifted the way to really it's the insecurity. You're scared, right? You think you're going to fail. And I was just like, maybe I'm not a salesperson. Maybe I'm not cracked up to do this. And fast forward 5 years now, I'm a manager. Would say I'm pretty damn good at sales, and it's something that has changed my life, and then it's going to continue to change my life because I'm just going to get better and better and better. And it goes back to, like you said, man, getting on that bus, taking people with you, dragging people along with you, making them successful while also making yourself successful. I think that was one of the biggest things that when we first met, it really, why you guys appealed to me so much is because, like, dude, everybody in our circle, we want them to be successful. Every person that comes and works for us, that works with us, like, we want them to be successful. As successful as I am and we are, I want you to, like, match that and be on the same level. And there's not many people in this world that wants that for other people. And that's why I appreciate you guys. And I think, too, that's why our clients that work with us, they see that we are genuine people because we all have that mindset of, like, hop on with us, let's ride this thing to the moon. And the only way that we screw up or the only way that we falter or we fail is if we hop off this and if one of us gets off this thing and now we won't succeed. So it's a very good thing to live by, right? You can apply it to different parts of life too, right? Like 51% of marriages end in divorce, right? It's because somebody hopped off. Now, there's situations where things aren't the best and like it might just be ideal to split it. But a lot of times it's just like somebody clocked out mentally and they're like, I may love this person still, but like I don't feel the need to for them to be in my life to show that love. Like, I'll love them from a distance. I'll love them from afar. And I believe that's why the American divorce rate is at 51%. And you look at places in like Asia and it's like 9%. You know what I mean? Because those people, when they commit their life to one another, they're like, I'm with you, good, thick, thin, the good, the bad, healthy, whatever it be, poor, rich, like they're sticking with it together. So that's just a rule for business, for real estate, and for really anything in life, man.
One thing I'll say too, like, 'cause one of our topics is obviously like hiring, great salespeople. Like the key thing is like you have to create a company culture where like people aren't being average, right? Because the average American got 1 grand to their name. The average American's overweight. The average American has a 50% chance of being divorced.
Right.
Why the hell would you want to put yourself in average?
Right.
Right? Like you have to focus on being above average, right? So you have to create a freaking bus ride for every person. Because like I always say too, like we spend 40% of our life working. Let's create an environment where all of us love what we do. Because dude, why waste 40% of our life if we're not gonna enjoy what we do? Right? So create a culture where growth is fun, everybody's growing, the world is full of abundance, right? Like the key thing too, right, is that like we can't do anything alone in our life. It literally took 10,000 people to put the first man on the moon. It took 10,000 people to put an iPhone in every single hand. It took 10,000 people to make Amazon be able to do free shipping to like everywhere in the US, right? So like the reality is, man, it's gonna take, like a team, like, it's gonna, like Sparta had like 300, warriors. It's gonna take a team of 300 people that believe in your vision and what you do in your life, right? So if you can just start creating your own tribe where you tell everybody what you want to accomplish. Oh dang, what I want to accomplish, I want everybody to know me when it comes to real estate here in my city. I want to be I don't want to be average. Oh shoot, average realtor does this many transactions per year, average wholesaler does this many transactions per year. Fuck that shit, man. No, I want to be fucking great. I want people to know me, and I want people to, get value and have a better life because
100%.
they met me.
100%. I was talking to my fiance the other day, and we were just talking about life, which we do quite a bit, which I love. But, one thing I told her is like, actually it was my mom and my fiance, now I'm thinking about it. And I told them, I was just like, I am okay if someone wants to be average. Like if someone wants to be a C+, C- person, like I'm okay with that. That's your prerogative, right? But for me, I don't think that it's an option. Like I will not be average. Like when I have children, they will not think that their dad is an average guy, right? Like I won't raise them to be average, right? I watched this documentary about like some kids playing golf or whatever, and his dad, he was like, I'm a C average person, right? My job is to get my daughter to be an A+ person. And as a father and as a parent, that's like a really good thing to say, but like the question I asked myself is like, why have you counted yourself out to where you're still alive and you're still calling yourself a C- or C average person, right? Like Stas posted it this weekend, and it was like a lot of smart people will hate this, but success has nothing to do with intellect and everything to do with creativity, right? And that's so powerful, man, because we all know somebody that's so extremely smart, and you're just like, how did you get to this point in your life? But we also know an idiot that slept his way through school, and he's like a 6-figure-a-year entrepreneur, and it's just, it's pretty seamless for him. You're just like, how did this guy is extremely smart. He's valedictorian. This guy slept through every single class. You know what I mean? Like, how does that work out? How does this guy richer than this guy, right? Because it's not intellect. It's all about creativity. And with that being said, in like sales, it's such a creative industry because like the way you sell is not going to be the way I sell.
Facts.
The way the Star sells is not going to be the way I sell. Like, it's literally up to you to create your persona, your process, to get the results that you want to get. Insanity is a really big thing in sales because like it's scripts, it's processes, it's you read this, you'll get to this, right? You do this, you'll get to this, and that's such bullshit. Like I used to always hate when a manager would give me like a pitch and they're like, just read this and you'll be successful. Okay, well, what if they say this at this part and now I don't know how to answer it? Or what if they do this and then this completely throws off my process? Well, you need to know how to handle that, and that comes with creativity, right? And knowing that if I say this and I word this the right way, I'm going to get the answer that I want. My fiance hates that, but I do that all the time. I'm like, okay, if you want to go out to eat, should we choose here or should we choose here? And she's like, well, I'm feeling this and I'm feeling that. And the way that I chose is I put the one that I know she would choose first, and then I put the one that I knew she wouldn't like the second one because I know she'd be like, okay, let's just go here. And I knew that's what I wanted to do too, right? So
you made selling easier.
Way easier. Because I'm like, okay, if I put this restaurant first and I put this restaurant second, she's going to hear the first one and be like, that's an option. And the second one, she's going to be like, we'll see. Right? But like I word things in a way to where they understand it, right? The person on the other end of the phone, on the other end of the camera, whatever it may be, to where it's like, I know you're going to give me this answer and I'm going to word it because one, I wanted to make it easier on myself. I also wanted you to digest it a lot easier, right? Stay away from yes and no's, right? We all know that open-ended questions, but even more, like ask your open-ended question in a way that you think that person is going to answer that question.
It's all about like knowing your customer, listening to them, and then like based off of their demographics, who they are, and getting them to like you being adaptable to being a person they want to work with and knowing how to solve their problem. You know, like that's what it's all about. It's about knowing irrefutable laws where all salespeople have the same thing in common.
Yeah.
And from there, man, it's just about, like not being afraid to get out of your turtle shell.
Yep.
And from there, just being like, look, let me learn from the top people. Let me hang around with 5 people that, are growing just like me. Mm-hmm. Let me learn to go from introvert to extrovert, be the person in the middle to where, I can actually be able to add an impact to people, right? Because, and the other thing is, let me run this 1,000-day task where I do one kick every single day to where I get better so that I impact people's lives, because if I impact people's lives, wealth to me goes up. So this is to summarize one episode of Thankful for Real Estate podcast.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you guys being part of the Kind family.
Absolutely.
We appreciate you guys, taking the time to listen to us, however long this podcast is, because, it's a lot to, you can listen to anybody, but you're taking the time to listen
to us, and I appreciate that. If you guys have any topics, anything that you want us to talk about or have our insight on, please let us know. We're trying to be very cautious about what we say, but I think that as we talk a little bit more, we don't give a damn. So let us know any questions, any topics, anything like that, and we would love to talk about it.
And then if you want to get in contact with us, our Instagram is at Kind Skiptracing.
Yep.
Right? And then if you want to reach out to us as well, you could go to our website, kindskiptracing.com. Yep. And then you can either call our main line or, insert one of the fill-out forms and then just let us know what we can help you with. We'd love to help you when it comes to, getting more sales.
Absolutely.
Improving your business, and we'd love for you to join the bus with us.
100%. I want Christmas cards, so I would love to talk to you.